Mantranam Tuya Smrita Shakti Rupaya Bhadarohe Tatihina Nishvalaha Sharda Pravata Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. She who the seers of India come to know and remember as the Primordial Shakti is the meaning in all the scriptures, slokas and sutras of India. Without her, O fair ones, all the worlds and their fruits would become like clouds with no rain. She is the perfect I consciousness existing in all the multitude of words. And the meaning of all the mantras, whose very being is the essence of non-duality. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Tayu Shantihi Antariksham Shantihi Prativi Shantihi Apaho Shantihi Oshadaya Shantihi Vanashpataya Shantihi Vishvadeva Shantihi Brahma Shantihi Sarvam Shantihi Shantare Eva Shantareti Shantar Soma Shantareti Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. There is peace in the sky. There is peace on earth. There's peace in the waters, in the trees, creepers, herbs, and flowers. There's peace with man, peace with woman and child. And peace is with peace. And Brahman is this ineffable peace. May that peace enter into us and permeate us to the very core of our being. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us. May peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. And with those words around that excellent Sanskrit expression, Shanti, 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 we come to you from peace, and hopefully you are also in that quality, your peace of mind, which you need first and foremost, said the Holy Mother. And we want to transmit to you teachings of the Dharma, which also will increase this peace of mind within us and radiate out into all the external tattvas, which we just chanted about, so that those clouds will be with abundant rain, a rain of bliss and peace and love and light. And we have been speaking in this way on this particular subject called mantra and how it destroys karma, or if you wish, how it can neutralize karma, for an hour and a half last Sunday at class, or an hour and 15 minutes in this shorter class that we're doing on Sundays starting this new year. And we'll do the same today, give an hour to an hour and 15 minutes or so of teachings on the mantra and on karma. Defining karma might be a little bit difficult. It is a sort of red flag word for people nowadays, even in its lesser definition. And mantra also has been a word that's reached into the English language from the Deva Bhasha, that is the ancient Sanskrit or language of the gods, wherein great systems like mantra have been remembered from ancient times, as I just chanted. And those words of power, bijams, seeds, and so forth, that within them that dwell Shakti power, and give them their potency to help neutralize our negative thoughts and encourage our positive thoughts. And as we were talking about yesterday at satsang, make sure that it opens us up to a divine refuge we can take, which is present when we can separate positive from negative and foresee the immediate moment which is existing within all beings, and that light of consciousness that makes it up. So last week we went through 21 points of mantra practice. That's this chart here on my right. And we did it in context of the 4 different phases in which it happens. Vaikari was first, to give you a quick rundown. That covered these first 9 points. And then we went to Madhyama, which is a word that actually means medium or middling. And we looked at the several points that were under that heading. Madhyama. And then after that, Pashanti, which is a more advanced stage of mantra practice. And then ending in the supreme stage. That word, of course, in Sanskrit is para. And we wanted to cover all 21 points under these 4 phases. So we did that homework, that Dharma teaching, and I hope you've all looked back on it and memorized some of these points and began to incorporate them into your mantra practice, particularly if it's new. Like, for instance, on the retreat a couple weeks ago in Hawaii, we had a new initiate who took the mantra, and hopefully these further teachings on mantra, that there's not always enough time to give them at the time of initiation or in the midst of a retreat. That's why these classes follow up very nicely, and a person can look back and read into all of those initial instructions, like I did for Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, peace and bliss be upon him, when he gave me my mantra, and some many decades ago, and I had to sort of find a way to practice it that incorporated both meaning of the words and constancy of practice and knowledge of making some headway in this unique practice, which would say that mantra is really common to all the 4 yogas. It's there in the Jnanam with all the slokas. It's there in meditation because you're using the mantra to get into a peaceful state of mind so that you can meditate. And it's there in bhakti too, when you chant the names of the Lord and spread the teachings, like Sri Ram says in the 9 limbs of bhakti. The very second limb of that is spreading the teachings to others, sharing them with others. Narada mentions that in his Bhakti Sutras as well, as one of those 8 forms of sharing the teachings, of moving through the bhakti path with mantra and sloka in hand. And then also even the karma yoga has it, because karma yoga has to do with words, thoughts, actions. And we want all of those to be non-violent, and pure, clear, not hazy, so that these negative karmas which the mantra is about to destroy might not be there at all, as is the case with some of our great souls who came, like Swami Vivekananda. Sri Ramakrishna said, oh, he's perfect at birth. So wasn't a practice that he needed, mantra. He could say a Mahavakya, a great saying, for instance, or just recite the scriptures and send himself into a deep state of mind, a samadhi. Sri Ramakrishna was the same. He saw a devotee telling the beads one day. And so he said, here, let me try that. So he took the beads and he started repeating Mother Kali's name. And within just a few recitations, the beads fell from his hand. And he was already there in that deep state of meditation that other beings are trying so hard to reach after they settle the mind and maintain it in a vibrationless place without vrittis, and then watch it for a long time so that these vibrations don't come back and spoil that equanimity. All of those phases one could go through in these steps of 21 number, which you're saying when you undertake the mantra and its recitation on the mala, the beads. There you see there in the picture, the image here. So receive the mantra from a guru. That's really important. Animate the mind with it. The chitta means the thoughts. Awaken the mind to your ishtam, antaryami. That is, you meditate on the mantra with the image of the Lord in your mind's eye and in your heart. Then your thoughts can dissolve. People are trying to dissolve their thoughts before they take up these three. How is that possible? And then you intensify your awareness, or it becomes intensified. And then the breath becomes equal naturally. You don't have to really force it or practice forced pranayama, which Holy Mother said can be detrimental to the mind. And then the kundalini awakens and rises, means you become aware of it at different centers. She might already be there, hidden. In the mantra, you say her name and she says yes, comes out, shows herself. All of this is very, very tantric and very mantric, and really very Vedantic too. But then you start having these visions and these inner sounds, like Om, so forth. So those first 9 steps, to make a quick review of them, sound different today probably than they did last week, where I went deeper with them and took more time on them. But they're just really a matter of course, and they're very natural and spontaneous when you take up the practice. And this is all covered in the Vaikari stage. There's a Shakti aspect that is attending upon you, and that's what I'll show you next. That's where we're going after this quick review. Then you perceive these inner realms. In other words, you know that the kingdoms of heaven are within you, and that you go into them every night, say when you dream, when your senses are shut down. And then you begin to hear that sacred sound, the nada, nada Brahma, Holy Mother calls that, or Shabda Brahma. And then awareness focuses on Om, whereas before you were just hearing it come off and on, like a distant sound. Like when the ocean had waves, you were behind the sand dunes, you knew something was there, but then the ocean went silent all of a sudden, and you didn't hear it anymore. Then waves came again. So the consciousness is floating in and out of awareness of Om, but you must concentrate on it for a time, not just say, oh, I tried, it's not working, I don't hear it. You have to actually open to it and focus upon it after these steps have been completed. And that all happens. Then this is all part of the Madhyama phase, the middle phase. And then you see these inner worlds, and resistance happens. And you reject the occult powers that come out of them, because you're free from the body at that point, and you have lots of options open to you that you didn't have when you were identified with the body and senses, because that's all limiting. And you become convinced of that you're the body, and that you're senses, and that you're the objects, and then enjoyment is the point of life, which is, none of that is the case. So you can see how free and easy you're feeling at this stage of mantra practice. And then that's where these worlds and these powers suggest themselves to you. But Father of Yoga says you must have that Dharma mega samadhi at that point. You must have a state of mind that resists temptation of meddling with the worlds, and opens yourself up to the all-pervasive Brahman around you. I remember in my own case having very powerful dreams and then saying, this is a dream, and waking up, for instance. And when I was in the dream, I said, I could stay here, but I have my body back on earth, and there's things to do. I'm going to say the mantra now and wake up. So the minute I started saying the mantra, there I was back in my body. I took back my physical senses, I took back and gave up my subtle senses, my dream senses, and took back awareness of the body. And so those experiences happen to you. But if you were to become attracted by heavenly pleasure there, in the same way in which most people are attracted to physical objects and their pleasures here, it's really the same thing on a different level. And you're impeding your spiritual growth when you do that. And these powers that you can exercise in the dream state are really nothing. They don't net you anything. They're empty. And you can't work out your karmas in a dream, for instance. You have to come back here on earth where you created them and work them out. And the best way to do that is with the mantra. So if you can get beyond this 13th and 14th step of these 21 in the Madhyama phase, then the aspirant can stay detached from that bliss. Remember, Father of Yoga says 4 kinds of obstacles to meditation. And bliss, attachment to bliss is the 4th. So restlessness, laziness, of course we know about those. Attachment and aversion, we've heard about those. We have to observe them in us and reject them, just like you would reject worlds and powers. And then observe this bliss that comes to you by being free of the body and senses and still knowing that you exist, because most people identify with their body, senses, objects, and worlds as the only existence. So you can see how it follows the philosophy of Vedanta very perfectly. Pashanti phase then kicks in, and there's only 4 steps to it there. Light comes either with or in place of sound. This is at the divine level, like seeing your third eye open. That happens sometimes not only in dreaming and deep sleep, but sometimes even in the waking state. That can occur to you. Witness consciousness develops, and we wish we could just jump from step 1 to there. As Dharma teachers, we wish people could do that. And we wish we could have done it when we were in our practice phase. Out of that witness consciousness, the experience of pure conscious awareness is now available, and you reach this para level where she resides. That's very important there, that 19th step of these 21 steps. You're at this point, of course, reaching through these 4 stages which we looked at. I'm not going to take you through those again. You can look back on them. At that point, they consider you a rishi, just like if you reach the first of the 10 pure lands in Buddhism, the other Buddhas consider you a Buddha. Oh, great, you've done it. You've given it all up. You've become your Buddha nature. Now you've got 9 more lands to attain inside. It's the same way here. If you make acquaintance with your mother, it's about time you did, isn't it, in this lifetime, and she will come through, and this will happen. Everything will be seen as mantra and word. That is, you'll see everything as vibration coming from an original source. Om, the word, and how when it vibrates spontaneously, worlds are created and withdrawn. In an internal moment, the coming and going there is non-actual. It's quick, like you falling into samadhi or you falling into deep sleep straight from waking. It's quick and immediate, so nothing really changes. You have this added dimension now of seeing everything vibrating inside of Brahman, or inside Brahman's word, the word of God. In the beginning was the word was with God, and the word was God, as the saying is. So a quick review of these just took 10 minutes because we want to keep you in memory of that. And what we want to do at this point is show you that these 21 steps in 4 phases are presided over by 4 aspects of her. So she's there with you all along the way. We can look at this beautiful image of the Dakshinesha Kali image at the temple, and Swami Vivekananda superimposed over her there, and then on top of that, all of these 6 stages of merging, the indications of Kundalini awakening. We can mention those. We don't need to go into them very deeply. The main point of this is just like there are 4 phases to your 21-point mantra practice. As you go through these 4 phases, there are these Divine Mother Shakti is guiding you through them. The one that pertains most to these steps is Varnamai, that second one, which is a mid-state. So in the Madhyama state, you have Varnamai coming forth, which is more, has to do with the verbalization at a gross and subtle level, that is, teachings at the gross level, Dharma teachings, and mantra at a subtler level. And this is all having to do, by the way, in accordance with higher chakras. We say Hrim from the heart. We say Aim from the throat. We say Om from the third eye. So Om Aim Hrim, or Hrim Aim Om, is what is inferred by attainments in mantra practice that go in 4 stages that are presided over by 4 aspects of Shakti. So that's jumping the gun a little bit to the verbal, but let's start back at the physical, which has a little bit more to do with the earlier steps. There you see the human condition is in the physical, which is a lower level or a grosser vibration of things. The aspects of Shakti there is called Kriyavati. She affects detachment of the self from the body and the nervous system. So you know all of those asanas you've been doing and all of that breathing exercise you've been practicing, pranayama and so forth. If you had have handed it all over to her as your refuge and said, would you do this for me? And just allow her to get in, then that would have all been truncated, very, very short. Shortened the duration of all the effort and time that you had to put in with that. You just recognize that aspect of Shakti that wants to allow you freedom by detaching you from body and senses. Father of Yoga even talks about that. He says, Purusham Artam Shunyanam Gunanam Prati Prashavaha, in the last sutra of the Yoga Sutras. He goes on to say, Vachitihi Shaktihi iti. So, in other words, Koivalya Pratista Swarupam. Vachiti Shaktihi iti. So Koivalya Pratista Swarupa, the essence of freedom, is attained in steadiness, pratistam, when she gets a hold of the surrendered soul and takes it through these phases after you have met your guru, followed his instructions. Isn't that what it's all been saying here? Very important to follow the tradition, quote unquote, my own teacher, follow the tradition, and do it through all the stages that come up. Keep it going, follow through. Next week we'll talk about that at this time, Saturday and Sunday we'll have that seminar on readiness, preparation, and follow through. What's the difference between readiness and preparation? You'll be interested to know when I present it to you Saturday morning's class next week. So look for that, come to that weekend function, and instead of this Saturday satsang and Sunday class, they will be replaced by that. And we'll talk more about how to be ready to prepare yourself, then to follow through with a practice such as this. All of these are again coming in the aftermath of you having received your mantra, if you've just received it, or maybe understanding the mantra after many decades, if you received it decades ago. It's not just something that you take and give up, or try and give back to the teacher. Somebody tried to do that to the Holy Mother. She said, I can't take that back. What's the matter with you? The mantra cannot be taken back once it's given. The seed has been planted. Now you deal with it. And so readiness, preparation, and then follow through is very good. So those of you who are planning to attend the seminar, look back on last week's class, review this week's class, because that will be a readiness and a preparation that will make you comprehend better the depth of the teachings that are coming in that seminar. So Kriyavati, you can see how the mother is watching over you at the very basic level. It's like saying, well, the aspirant knows that it has to detach itself from things that are limiting it. It's not a matter so much of good and bad or virtue and vice, sin and virtue. It's more a matter of bondage and freedom. So if you want free of this bondage that you've taken on, she's ready to help you. We're at the basic level there. Kriyavati means, spontaneous help. And she's there to help you affect the removal of your awareness from mundane things, if you want to put it. The method used there is Tantric Hatha Yoga. That is asana, mudra, and pranayam. So that's why I brought those up earlier. It's a more spontaneous thing, like Kriyavati, when you give it to her. And she can arrest the breath when you think about her. She can put you in a spontaneous asana. Sri Ramakrishna used to go into spontaneous asanas. And then, he might even go into spontaneous mudras that people hadn't seen or didn't know much about. So this is all happening when you become aware of awareness, become conscious of consciousness. That is, that the Vaktavi, as we said in these 21 steps, is there helping you at all these levels. It'd be good if you got reminders of that early, or remembered that early, like the great seers of India. They always remember her as the imperishable Shakti, I chanted. So that's very important that happens. Let's go to the second level, which is beyond the physical to the verbal. There's Varnamai. Varna really means letters, alphabets, words, alphabet of them. A garland of alphabets is what that means. And so she's full, Mai, she's full of all the words. That's why I started out chanting that sloka from the Tantras. That she's the meaning in all the words, and she's the secret of all the mantras, and she herself is in the multitude of words, particularly with regard to the scriptures, which when you hear them will waken your consciousness up. Mantra and scriptures act in conjunction, but they are very differently at different levels and have different functions. So here she awakens dormant powers of the voice, knowledge, and the power to confer teachings. So when she gets into this heart-throat, because you see the chakras over here, Anahata and Vishuddha means heart and throat. Because Tantra, Hatha Yoga, and Kriyavati was working more at the three lower levels, if we go back real quick, didn't mean to move over that so quickly, although it's a shorter class. So basically, Anahata and Vishuddha, when you practice her presence there, is a good way of putting it, then the mantras becomes empowered. Remember that step? And the bijams, you begin to know the seed bijams and how much power you have there, which is different than those occult powers that were coming from the state where you have to resist the temptation of powers and lokas. Because here people have come on earth because they want power and they want worlds. They want nature, they want power over nature, they want power over dominion over countries, they want power over other souls. All of that is a strong desire, Trishna they call it, to lord over, to have these things, take them to the self. But when you started this practice, you gave all those away to her, like Sri Ramakrishna did. So you're on a completely different trajectory, and you're on the righteous path. So you can see how important this verbal stage is. And there's another teaching about Tripura Sundari in the Upanishad called Tripura Sundari Upanishad, where they talk about the mantra coming from the guru, first as outer, then inner, then transcendent. This is a same teaching, but more from the Tantras, whereas that's more from the Upanishads. Let's look, so we don't take a lot of time on it, to the past the middling channel, Madhyama, to the upper channel, which is mental. So now it's really referring more to this third eye, which Sri Ramakrishna said, third eye is between the two eyebrows. The eyes are in the forehead, not down low. Why are they always looking low? Toward the lower centers, he said. So focus up in to that power center there, which is called the Agya Chakra. And there you'll find her as Kalatma. She allows for transcendence of all the worlds and penetrates the sixth chakra. This, you might say, is the real purpose of your mind, which is not your brain, by the way, because that brain is just a noodle, and your body's just a worm. So call them the worm and the noodle. But your mind is something completely different. That's the kingdoms of heaven within you, and all the nadis and that are leading you inward towards non-duality, towards your true nature, which is formless, timeless, birthless, deathless, indivisible, transcendent, all-pervasive. We found a lot of words in English to try and describe that. So Kalatma is there when you use your mind in that inward transcending way. Inward ascension, we like to call that. So her function really is refining, merging, and dissolving, as I just chanted from Patanjali. I think I chanted the Sanskrit, but I didn't give you the English. The Primordial Shakti, he says, affects the return of transmigrating consciousness to its source. She strips name and form and time and space away, and then the soul can reach its final liberation. That's the last sutra of Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. You can see how he is ending up all those four padas of sutras, the famous Patanjala system, or eight-limbed Ashtanga system, with that powerful sloka about Divine Mother, Chitti Shakti. And this is why I'm borrowing it here to use. So the refining, merging, and dissolving power, do you want anyone else to handle that for you? You're probably going to want to get it to an expert, and there's only one great expert for formlessness. We were reading actually today that Swami Vivekananda said that if he hadn't have spent so much time lecturing in the U.S. and had to take care of so many duties just giving out the Vedanta to Westerners who hadn't heard about it before, he said that if he hadn't have spent so much time doing that, he could have developed in him the ability to grant nirvikalpa samadhi to others, like Sri Ramakrishna had done to him with a touch. So that was in the great soul, Vivekananda, the perfect man. The Lord of Men, Narendra was his name. But he would have had to concentrate on it, samyama style, if you know what I'm talking about, with concentration, meditation, and samadhi, and brought that out of him. But he had to really tend the fires here to make us ready, to prepare us, and then maybe we could go and follow through with things that are for our highest good. So now we've covered then the chakras that all of this covers, the method that all of it covers in these first three phases, and the aspects of Shakti that are there. She's famous for having many names. So there you have Kriyavati, Varnamai, and Kalatma to add to your many precious names of Mother. And if you're operating at body, senses, objects, then you can propitiate Kriyavati. If you're working with speech and throat and meaning, and so that you can propitiate Varnamai. And if your mind opens and you're using the mantra to a higher effect in these last stages of practice called Pashanti, then you can propitiate Kalatma. What about the final stage, which is the highest, or the spiritual stage? We've gone from physical to verbal to mental, and now we're at the spiritual phase. Of course, that would coordinate with the para phase of the mantra in the teaching here of the 4 stages of mantra practice. And those final 3 stages of the 20 points, the final 3 points of the 21 points that starts with, there she is, I see her now. I've become aware of her. So that's, at that level, it's called Vedamayi. At the merging stage just before that was called Laya Yoga. Laya means to dissolve. So she's taking consciousness and dissolving it back into its source. Just like you'd take an ice cube and just put it into hot water and just watch it dissolve. Or have a cup of tea, as we used to do with our SRV kids, and then put some sugar cube in it or some blob of honey and just watch it dissolve. So that's the soul getting brought back to its formless essence by the mother herself. The whole thing is being supervised by her. She's coordinated it all and is bringing the soul back to its final liberation. That's Koivalya Pratista Swarupam. Very nice 3 words in Sanskrit. So this is again Raja Yoga. So you see the 4 yogas there: Tantric Hatha Yoga, Mantra Yoga, Laya Yoga, and Raja Yoga. We didn't say stop at any one of them. And just go forward and follow through, and envision yourself doing so inside of your own practice in 21 steps, with 4 stages involved, with 4 aspects of the mother presiding over it. There, that last sentence, you can go back and just write that down. And you've pretty much gotten everything I wanted to say in this first class and half, to give you the total picture of how powerful mantra practice is, why it's so prevalent in all the religions, called by different names. So at the Vedamayi level, that's true Raja Yoga, and pierces all the chakras then, and particularly opens up those to the highest Sahasrara, the 1,000-petaled lotus. So this is the Divine Mother as she operates. Sometimes we like to sing about her like that. Abai Pade Pran Shopechi Ami Abai Pade Pran Shopechi Ami Arki Jamer Bairekechi Ami Arki Jamer Bairekechi Abai Pade Pran Shopechi Kalinam Kalpataru Hridaye Ropana Korechi Kalinam Kalpataru Hridaye Ropana Korechi Abai Pade Pran Shopechi Ami Abai Pade Pran Shopechi. I have offered my entire life, Ram Prasad sings, at the fearless feet of the Divine Mother of the Universe. Now death cannot frighten me anymore. The all-powerful name of Kali, which is in his mantra, is the wish-fulfilling tree, the Kalpataru, which I have planted deep within my heart, right there in the Anahata Chakra, right? The body, so dear to all, I have sold in the marketplace of the world, receiving Sri Durga's name as payment. So the body back there at the physical level, he gave it, as it were, then here to Kriyavati, and she distanced consciousness from it. That was just the body, my child. Now you may give it up and go inward towards higher reality. And then he says, so I took up resonance within the stainless self which abides within the body, and patiently awaited death's approach. This time when death draws near, he must have known that he had other so-called deaths in his past lifetimes, but he really never died. So when death approaches this time, I will open up my heart to him, reveal the mother's sacred presence there. That is this Kalpataru tree, the wish-fulfilling tree that he planted. In another song he says, I planted it there from a seed given to me by my guru. So that's the mantra. So installed within his heart, watered it with the tears of his devotion, and then chanted the mother's name, used her mantra every day, and she began to infill all his chakras. He became aware of her at higher and higher levels of his acting, thinking, breathing, the whole shooting match, as they say. And then he says, the extremely precious name of Kali has been tied to a tuft of my hair, keeping her forever on my mind. With these provisions made, Ram Prasad sits in profound silence, prepared for the final journey, chanting Kali, Kali, Kali. So the mantra keeps going on with her in his mind, because he's opened up the channels. She has helped him open up the channels to the mind and beyond, to these higher chakras. So very much like that chant I just recited from Patanjali, where she returns the transmigrating consciousness to its source and strips away name and form as she does so. So now we have looked at 21 points of mantra practice in 4 phases, presided over by 4 aspects of Shakti. All of this in an hour and a half or two is something that is very precious, and it's going to attend the process of Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. That is, you want to hear it again and again, contemplate it, roll it over in your mind again and again, and finally come to realization of it as your mantra reaches this inner stage of transcendence, takes you to the timeless goal of human existence. And so a few other notes here in this chart. You see the stages of merging there, called the stages of Laya Yoga. So you look back at the mental level at Kalatma and see that in Laya Yoga you encounter the timeless, spaceless point wherein all wisdom tattvas abide. So all the knowledge within you is back in seeds there in the deepest part of the cosmic mind. And then the soul encounters that naturally as Kundalini takes the soul to that higher chakra, those highest chakras. And then the yogis talk about dividing that dimension in half and attaining full concentration, slipping in between the division that's made by those dividing the 2 parts in half. You call that Ardendu. And then attaining full concentration that way, separating all the non-essentials from the essentials, and becoming very clear about that, you could say, in Vedanta. And then with mind, gaining a universal identity that's beyond but inclusive of all the different religions and teachings of the world. Experiencing the ocean of light. Remember that stage back in our 21 points of mantra practice? That happened at a very high stage where sound, nada, turns into jyoti. And so you have this experience of the ocean of light. We've heard several times in our tradition that when the soul passes, that the soul will have vision of Sri Ramakrishna or Holy Mother. And so they call that even a promise, for the devotee that's meditated upon them all his or her life with the mantra for them. That's that ishtam in your heart, right? We talked about that in the earlier stages. The guru is an emanation of that ishtam, giving you the seed symbol with their name in it that you concentrate on and follow through your whole life. And then when it's time to drop the body, these aspects of Shakti will come and reveal to you the vision of the beloved. So that's what we mean here by experiencing the ocean of light. And then there's the advent of certain powers. And then vyapaka, experiencing all pervasiveness. And then samadhi, placing the mind in a static state, so completely formless, without waves, without thoughts, without conditions. And then finally the mind is able to dissolve. So that's kind of a point-by-point blow of Laya Yoga, which comes out of that state of recitation of mantra, which is of deeper nature. Then finally, pratista, we just said that word out of the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. You establish mind in a constant and stable condition in non-dual reality. So she is the very essence of non-dual reality. We just chanted out of the Tantras at the beginning of this class. If you want to have a little more information for it, and we saw this in Sri Ramakrishna, there are some indications that this is happening on the outside of people. Not only on the outside, but you can see them on the outside. There's these feelings of bliss or delight, where we saw Sri Ramakrishna just taken up and dancing, like a plume of incense, he was described. Sometimes danced like a lion in the forest at night. Other times as graceful as a plume of incense rising. So that ananda, they call it, is an indication of the rising of Kundalini Shakti to higher centers. And then they call kampa, a kind of trembling of the body. And that also happens inwardly. You feel like your consciousness, your energy, your prana, not just your body, but the prana, the energy, your thoughts are all kind of experience a kind of blissful tremoring, vibration. And that's because you're about to give birth. You've become pregnant with all of these practices, and it has to result in something. So that's the birth of a newborn power and a leap of fresh realization. That's called utbhava. Then gurni happens, intoxication or reeling with delight. Sometimes we saw or read about some of Sri Ramakrishna's devotees experiencing that when they practiced the mantra and studied the teachings and meditated. They would get up and almost without warning they'd be kind of having to grab the wall, reeling with delight. And then sleep samadhi, which indifference to outer objects occurs. So there's this, we called that kumbhaka recently in one of our weekend classes. It's like suspension of breath, but it also means suspension of action, suspension of thought. It's a kind of yogic kumbhaka that's much more than just the suspension of the three movements of the breath, puraka, rechaka, and kumbhaka. So this is a kind of very high level of nidra samadhi or sleep samadhi that occurs. And then finally merging. And that, of course, you wouldn't see outside except to see the great master, for instance, is described. We wanted to come and see your samadhi, some people said, some sadhus said when they entered his room one day. So they waited around for a while and he went into it and they left. So they didn't really see outward. He didn't grow a pair of two horns, as Holy Mother said, or something strange happened to him outwardly. He just naturally went into this and went deep. So this happens to a person who has merged consciousness And yes, first it happens through practice, and then it happens through affinity. You, like we were just saying, you think about your ideal, or you think about the formless, and it begins to take you over. Sri Ramakrishna was very much like that. Just to think about it, Holy Mother said, would put me in it. So there has to be a kind of affinity with it. You have to draw close to it. It's like if you get close to a fire and get real warm when you were cold. Later on, you're cold again. You just think about the fire and you can almost feel that warmth again. So you have to bring the presence of Brahman, the heat of Brahman, back to you by concentrating upon the experiences you've had. And then that makes it possible for Laya Yoga, or merging. So these are some of the indications, as well as some of the stages of merging that happen, I'd say, at that level of Laya Yoga and Raja Yoga, presided over by these two aspects of Shakti. So she will change her form and face as you mature in your practice, and come back to you. Who are you? I'm the same one that was just here. You're seeing me at a different level of vibration now. Your mind has changed to a higher level of vibration. Now you're seeing me in this form. And pretty soon I'll be here, but you won't see my form, because you will merge into absolute reality, and I'll see to it that you do. So this is a good complement that if we had a two-part class last week, we would have put all of this into one class. That is the 21 points of mantra practice, the 4 stages that happens in, and the 4 aspects of Shakti that preside over each of those movements. So knowing about this then means you contemplate it, and when you do the practice, you keep it in mind. Keep it right there in mind. And even if you want to start out with notes, oh, I must be about there now, you see, but envision that happening to you, and therefore make it more real, more visceral. So in the remaining time in this particular, which isn't a lot, I wanted to get to the teaching of how all of this, now that we've become, you might say we've refamiliarized ourselves with the depths of mantra practice. Because some people, yes, they just get the mantra, and the saying is, like thieves in the night, they just run away with it. Some never use it, even though, as I said earlier, the seed has been planted, you can't really give it back, nor you'll be able to escape it. It's more like some lifetime or some period when you really need it, it'll surface again, and you'll be able to begin watering it. So that's sort of the thief in the night usage of that great, powerful tool given to you by your guru. Other people will practice just a little and give up. Some people will practice for the rest of their life. But how many will practice with the depth of understanding that they should have on hand? That is, particularly the meaning of the words. And when you talk about the meanings, you're talking about her. She's the meaning. And as this is illustrated very well. And she will guide those steps, 21 of them, in 4 stages with 4 of her aspects. Repeat that again here so that we make sure that this goes deep into us. So we're thinking, 21 plus 4 plus 4, aren't we? And how to incorporate all of that, plus some keys of what will happen when that mantra practice begins to mature in the practitioner. How does it destroy karma? It's almost a question that doesn't need to be asked. It does, and it will, if you ask people who rely upon the mantra and who have deepened their mantra practice. They inexplicably, they just say, I forgot what ignorance was like. Or they'll say, I don't have negative things coming in my mind anymore. They're gone. It's like you put the mantra in there, everything ran away. I accept the mantra or the presence of the mother with the mantra. You talk to people who have practiced 10, 20 years of mantra and kept it up and followed through. This is about all you can get from them. And they can't tell you how it actually destroyed those things. It's probably, if you look at it through the lens of Advaita Vedanta or non-duality, is that they were never there in the first place. You placed them there. You decided to place something more powerful in their place, and that got rid of it all. All your delusions went away. My ignorance is gone, gone, utterly gone. One songwriter sings in India. I woke up one day, my ignorance was gone, gone, utterly gone. So he didn't know how that happened, but he couldn't remember what ignorance, delusion, and even suffering felt like anymore. So, therefore, it's sort of difficult for us to tell you how things work when the mantra, all we can say is that if you follow the tradition, like use a system like 21 points in 4 phases with 4 kinds of attendees in your favor, and you really put full faith in this, that you will be one of those people that some 10 or 20 years later will be standing in front of people saying, I don't know how it happened, but here I am. I have arrived. And I've had people come up to me and say, and to my teachers, how did you get that way? How did this happen? Over years, you can actually watch a soul get illumined in that way, and be kind of wonderstruck by it. And then when you start to go through it yourself, you'll begin to understand, for instance, how things merge and how the tongue goes silent and the mind gets dumbstruck and the prana arrests by itself, and the light comes forth as if out of nowhere, and the sound begins to suggest itself like a great ocean in the distance. All of these things, of course, listed in what we've studied so far. Probably the best that we can do is to look at the 3 grades of karma here, according to Sridham. Both he and Sri Krishna, that is, in the Ramayana and in the Gita, have said it is needful to discriminate action, inaction, and forbidden action. So you see those 3 levels there. Vikarma, forbidden; karma, self-motivated; akarma, selfless, or colorless, we like to say, because we also have a chart on this that talks about the 3 hues of karma, or the colors of karma. Black, that would of course be vikarma or forbidden, and mixed would be karma, or self-motivated, selfishly motivated, and then white, which would be closer to akarma, but there's a 4th called colorless, which these great souls live in. So let's look at these points under them. So maybe this will give us a look at what is being destroyed. At the negative level, acts done out of anger to inflict violence cause karma. And people cannot get away from this. It might even seem unfair, unjust sometimes to look at the world and its happenings. In other words, that's saying bad things happen to good people. So we have to then at least acknowledge that these actions that are so-called good or mixed or definitely negative are producing effects that cause people suffering. And so that's a part of the vikarma that mantra will destroy. You're pretty much just saying your mantra, and the residues of these karmas from past lifetimes will begin to be dissolved. You won't see that happening, but you just won't be accompanied or plagued by these thoughts and these problems again. They'll begin to diminish and dissolve. Also, ignorant actions done at an inauspicious time. So there's a little bit more refined kind of karma. You might almost call these stages when the mantra is used against negative karma, because the soul is tired of that, world weary, does not want to suffer anymore, is tired of the same old, as they say, then pretty much you'll see that this attenuation, that's why we use the word destruction of karma as compared to attenuation of karma, then beings will be informed by one of these aspects of Shakti, almost unannounced, that you're not doing that at the right time. As Holy Mother said, you can't get good mangoes out of season. So fruits out of season is usually not happening. So you have to wait for the right time in which to do this particular act that you're thinking about, or even having these particular thoughts that you're putting forth. So these are these negative resistances that come up that the karma will clear out until there is really nothing left but auspicious timing. Because Holy Mother, from that standpoint, would say, basically, why are you waiting till you're old to do these practices? Now's the time to do them, when you're young, when your prana is flowing. So make sure you do some practice young. So, yes, razor's edge paths, you might say, but basically, very important to know when to act and when not to act. Also, perverse actions committed against the Dharma. Well, in order to know that, you're going to have to know what the Dharma is. So you win either way. This is where negative turns into positive. And you'll go to your guru, you'll hear the Dharma teachings, you'll hear about the mantra, you'll hear about initiation, mantra diksha, and you'll take them. I'm here, now I'll do it. I accept it, let's move forward. And then the Dharma itself, all those teachings, which are mantras, and slokas and sutras, which are actually mantras, and the great sayings called the Mahavakyas, like this self is Brahman, or I am Brahman, right down to it, or I and my Father are one. Those things will gain ground in you. You'll have great faith in them. Shraddha, beyond belief, is this great faith. And then you have actions done out of guile and hypocrisy. So that kind of negative thinking, hazy thinking, will also begin to be destroyed by just constantly doing your mantra every day. You just get up and you do it, and you wait for the effects. These are fruits that you'll wait for. They're worth it. How does mantra act in the level of self-motivated actions? Because most of us are doing those most of our lives. Most beings are involved in that. Hopefully they're not doing forbidden actions, so the mantra doesn't have to work that hard in their case to have its salient effect. But in a case where these karmas are mild, that's going to be very quick. You'll be able to get the fruits of mantra practice swiftly, as if those 21 points were just meant to order for you at the right time. So actions performed for selfish reasons alone will begin to diminish. Actions done for reward or out of expectation, you'll begin to give those up. Actions which are attended by attachment, and might as well put in there aversion too, will be teachings for you, and the mantra will help you neutralize those. Basically, we talk a lot about destruction of karma, we talk about attenuation of karma, we talk about neutralization of karma. So these are rather stages which the mantras was helping bring about. Actions engaged in for glory, honor, and power, that is something that the ego will, as the mantra attenuates the ego and it gets riper and riper, it's more desirous of giving away instead of taking on. So it's a yogic ability that comes upon most souls. It's like if modesty wasn't there to begin with, it becomes very desirable to have or be modest, or to have humility on hand all the time. So this is again where mixed karma is beginning to show itself up, to get neutralized. Finally, beneficial action abandoned due to difficulties, because that's back up to auspicious timing. You want to know when to do an act and when not to do an act, and a lot of that impinges upon this ability to follow through, which again we'll be talking about next week in the Sunday class. A week from today I'll be explaining this idea of follow through, so that we're not giving up these difficult things we need to attain too early simply because they're posing as obstacles to us. We want to be able to pierce through that. On the other hand, if we can't pierce through it, we want to know when is the auspicious time for attempting that, so we don't waste time and energy. So there again, it would be good to have these 4 Divine Mother aspects on hand, informing the mind with the mantra, so that you'll know the auspicious timing for each thing. You might have to sit down and search for her, as my teacher said. When I came to the West, she had passed. I was in the West all alone, teaching the Westerners Vedanta, and I reached her through the mantra, he said. So I made contact with her in this new country, in this new part of his life, with these people who knew nothing about Vedanta and deeper teachings, and who were under the press of irreligion, Vivekananda said, like they were in India to a great extent at that time too. I reached her through the mantra, he said. I heard him say this. So quickly through the selfless acts, because the mantra won't have to do much work here. Doings devoid of desire and design, that's selfless karma. Acts successfully subjected to the fire of yoga. That's one of Swami Vivekananda's favorite expressions, the fire of yoga. And all I need is a scripture and the fire of yoga, and I can be up in Himalayas with, in cold weather with almost just one cloth around me, and all the activities down below go away, and I can just sit here with a reminder from the scriptures and the fire of yoga and just reach the highest state. And he loved that. Acts engaged in while thinking I do nothing. So here's where next week we'll be talking about the stage before preparedness, when you want to bring yourself to a condition of mind that preparation will mean something to you, and why people aren't able to do that, because it's this mood they're in. So they have to adjust their mood before they prepare themselves. Sort of like, oh, I don't want to sweep the floor, you see, so I'm not in the mood for it. So you make yourself in the mood, then you go sweep it. If you force yourself to sweep the floor when you're not in the mood, then you make a lot of mistakes. Your heart's not in it, as they say. So at lower levels, and then at much higher levels too, this applies. Mother, I don't want to sweep the floor, you do it. Okay, come along, my dear. So she's in there as one of these aspects helping you do this purification that you need to do in order to realize the truth. She'll be there with you. So take refuge there. And actions done by the mind steeped in wisdom. We wonder, all these karmas that come forth, if people are doing all their acts in unconsciousness or in ignorance. We know if they're doing them in deviousness, that's pretty obvious, because then you're back up to the V-karma problem. But if the difference between a soul doing their acts in lower knowledge as compared to doing it in higher knowledge, we'd like to know that too, what the effects are of just acting because you know what your job's about, you have secular knowledge about it, so forth, as compared to if you bring consciousness itself into your mind in the form of pure intelligence that Divine Mother presides over. Then what do your actions look like in that state? How is it different from actions done in just lower knowledge? Aparavidya, paravidya. That's a nice comparison. And finally, work undertaken for the sake of sacrifice. So that we would get into the 5 different kinds of sacrifice in the Dharma teachings. That's the other chart I had on hand. But you may see that at the seminar next weekend, because it does apply to that preparation stage and earlier, where you want to be ready for your everything that's about to happen to you, so you can extract the most out of it. So therefore, at the bottom of this final chart we offer in this, for the time being, 2-class karma and mantra series, the threefold fruits of action, good mixed and evil, accrue after death to all who are attached. But no karma attends those who renounce. So knowing the difference between the real and the unreal, you renounce the unreal, and then you go forth in thought, word, and deed, as Sri Krishna is suggesting here, and no karma accrues in your life. That's one of the meanings of my Guru's name, Asheshananda, Swami Asheshananda. No residue, Shesha, left, the bliss of having no residue left after living a dharmic and dedicated life, and with Divine Mother's mantra and the Divine Mother's presence there. I think we covered the whole thing, except the top quote by Sri Ram, whose beautiful image is there. He says, "This vibrating castle of karma, conjured by the mind in Maya, is fated to come crashing down about the ears of all and sundry. O seeker, take care. Walk the rare royal path that leads up and out of Maya to the land of enlightenment." That's a beautiful quote from him, Sri Ram, there. In the Adhyatma Ramayana we find it. And so as we've come to the end, we could end singing a little about him. Shri Ramachandra Kripalu Vajamana Harana Bhava Bhayadaranam. Shri Ramachandra Kripalu Vajamana Harana Bhava Bhayadaranam. Navakanchalochana Kancha Mukakara Kancha Pada Kanjaranam. Shri Ram, Shri Ram, Shri Ram, Shri Ram, Shri Ram, Shri Ram, Shri Ramachandra Kripalu Vajamana Harana Bhava Bhayadaranam. Om Sato Ma Satgamoya, Tamaso Ma Joitir Gamoya, Richor Ma Mritam Gamaya, Abhira Mayeti, Rudra Yate Dakshinam Mukam, Tenamam Pahinicham, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Lead us from lower truth to higher truth, and from darkness to light. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from the illusion of death to eternal life, and reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother of the universe, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Japa Harini Om Tat Sat.